figure stepped into the Boise's open lock, the tractor beam was cut off, and the speedster flashed away from the now stationary super ship.
"Better let formalities go for a while."
Captain Bradley interrupted the general introduction taking place.
"I was scared out of 9 years' growth when I saw you coming at us, and maybe I've still got the humps, but that Nevian is coming up fast, and if you don't already know it, I can tell you that he's no light cruiser."
"That's so, too," Costigan concurred. "Have you fellows got enough stuff so that you think you can take him? You've got the legs on him, anyway. You can certainly run if you want to." "Run?" Cleveland laughed. "We have a bone of our own to pick with that ship. We licked her to a standstill once, until we burned out a set of generators, and since we got them fixed we've been chasing her all over space. We were chasing her when we picked up your call. See there? She's doing the running." The Nevian was running, in truth. Her commander had seen and had recognized the great vessel which had flashed out of nowhere to the rescue of the three Terrestrials, and having once been at grips with that vengeful super dreadnought, he had little stomach for another encounter. Therefore his side thrust was now being exerted in the opposite direction. He was frankly trying to put as much distance as possible between himself and Triplanetary's formidable cruiser. In vain. A light tractor was clamped on, and the Boise flashed up to close range before Rodebush threw on her inertia, and Cleveland brought the two vessels relatively to rest by increasing gradually his tractor's pull. And this time the Nevian could not cut the tractor. Again that shearing plane of force bit into it and tore at it, but it neither yielded nor broke. The rebuilt generators of No. 4 were designed to carry the load, and they carried it. And again Triplanetary's every mighty weapon was brought into play. The cans were thrown, ultra and infra beams were driven, the furious macro beam gnawed hungrily at the Nevian's defenses, and one by one those defenses went down. In desperation the enemy commander threw his every generator behind a polycyclic screen, only to see Cleveland's even more powerful drill bore relentlessly through it. Punctured that last defense, the end came soon. A secondary SX-7 beam was now in place on Mighty 10's inner rings, and one fierce blast blew a hole completely through the Nevian cruiser. Into that hole entered Adlington's terrific bombs and their gruesome fellows, and where they entered, life departed. All defenses vanished, and under the blast of the Boise's projectors, now unopposed, the metal of the Nevian vessel exploded instantly into a widely spreading cloud of vapor. Sparkling vapor, with perhaps here and there a droplet or two of material which had only been liquefied. So passed the sister ship, and Rodebush turned his plates upon the vessel of Nerado. But that highly intelligent amphibian had seen all that had occurred. He had long since given over the pursuit of the speedster, and he did not rush in to do hopeless battle beside his fellow Nevians against the Terrestrials. His analytical detectors had written down each detail of every weapon and of every screen employed, and even while prodigious streamers of red force were raving out from his vessel, breaking her terrific progress and swinging her around in an immense circle back toward far Nevia, his scientists and mechanics were doubling and redoubling the power of his already titanic installations, to match and if possible to overmatch those of Triplanetary's super dreadnought. "Do we kill him now, or do we let him suffer a while longer?" Costigan demanded. "I don't think so, yet," replied Rodebush. "Would you, Lyman?" "Not yet," replied Cleveland grimly, reading the thought of the other and agreeing with it. "Let him pilot us to Nevia. We might not be able to find it without a guide. While we're at it we want to so pulverize that crowd that if they ever come near the Solarian system again they'll think it's 20 minutes too soon." Thus it was that the Boise, under only a few dynes of propulsion, pursued the Nevian ship. Apparently exerting every effort, she never came quite within range of the fleeing raider, yet never was she so far behind that the Nevian spaceship was not in clear register upon her observation plates. Nor was Nerado alone in strengthening his vessel. Costigan knew well and respected highly the Nevian scientist captain, and at his suggestion the entire time of the long and uneventful flight was spent in reinforcing the super ship's armament to the iron-driven limit of theoretical and mechanical possibility. Thus, when Nevia and her hot blue sun appeared upon his plates, Rodebush was ready for any emergency, and hurled his battleship upon the Nevian with every weapon aflame. But so was Nerado ready, and unlike her sister ship, his vessel was manned by scientists well versed in the fundamental theory of the weapons with which they fought. Beams, rods, and lances of energy flamed and flared. Planes and pencils cut, slashed, and stabbed. Defensive screens glowed redly or flashed suddenly into intensely brilliant coruscating incandescence. Crimson opacity struggled sullenly against violet curtain of annihilation. Material projectiles and torpedoes were launched under full beam control, only to be exploded harmlessly in mid-space, to be rayed into nothingness, or to disappear innocuously against impenetrable polycyclic screens. Both vessels were equipped completely with iron-driven mechanisms. Both were manned by scientists capable of wringing the last possible watt of power from their sources. They were approximately equal in size, and each ship now wielded the theoretical ultimate of power for her mass. Therefore neither could harm the other, furiously though each was trying. And more nearly they were approaching the red atmosphere of the world of the amphibians. Down into that crimson blanket the two warring spaceships dropped, down toward a city which Costigan recognized as that in which Nerado made his headquarters. "Better hold off a bit," Costigan cautioned. "If I know that bird at all, he's cooking up something." And even as he spoke there shot upward from the city a multitude of flashing balls. The Nevians had mastered the secret of the explosive of the fishes of the greater deeps, and were launching it in a veritable storm against the terrestrial visitor. "Those?" asked Rodebush calmly. The detonating balls of destruction were literally annihilating even the atmosphere beyond the polycyclic screen, but that barrier was scarcely affected. "No, that!" pointing out a hemispherical dome which, redly translucent, surrounded a group of buildings towering high above their neighbors. "Neither those high towers nor those screens were there the last time I was in this town. They're stalling for time down there, and that's all those fireballs are for. Good sign, too. Maybe they aren't ready for us yet. If not, you better take 'em while the taking's good, and if they are ready for us, we better get out of here while we're all in one piece." And in fact Nerado had been in touch with the scientists of his city, and had been instructing them in the construction of converters and generators of such weight and power that they could crush even the defenses of the super ship. They were not, however, quite done. The entirely unsuspected possibilities of speed inherent in absolute inertialessness had not entered into Nerado's calculations. "Better drop a few cans down on that dome, fellows, before they make trouble for us," suggested Rodebush to his gunners. "We can't," came Adlington's instant reply. "We've been trying it, but that's a polycyclic screen. Can you drill it? If you can, I've got a real bomb here, that special we built, that will do the trick if you can protect it from their beams until it gets down into the water." "I'll try it," Cleveland answered, at a nod from the physicist. "I couldn't drill Nerado's polycyclics, but I couldn't use any momentum on him. Couldn't ram him, he fell back with my thrust. But that screen down there can't back off, so maybe I can work on it. Get your special ready, and hang on, everybody." The Boise looped upward, and from an altitude of miles dove downward through a storm of force balls, rays, and shells. A dive checked abruptly as the hollow tube of energy, which was Cleveland's drill, snarled savagely down ahead of her and struck the shielding hemisphere with a grinding, lightning-splitting shock. As it struck, backed by all the enormous momentum of the plunging spaceship and driven by the full power of her mightiest generators, it bored in, clawing and gouging viciously through the tissue of that rigid and unyielding barrier of pure energy. Then, mighty drill and plunging mass against iron-driven wall, eye-tearing and furiously spectacular warfare was waged. Well it was for Triplanetary, that day, that its super ship carried ample supply of allotropic iron. Well it was that her originally gargantuan converters and generators have been doubled and quadrupled in power on the